Alright, this is on now.
Spongy versus contact bone. Here's a section femur, and it's showing you both types of bone. Remember what the knobby end of a bone is called? The epiphyses, and the shaft is called the diaphysis. What you see in the epiphysis, sleeping awake this morning, the compact is spongy. It's spongy. And it looks spongy, okay? Spongy or trabecular bone. I even see the term cancellous. Well, just different names for the same thing, which is whatever that appears like to you. It's light, it's airy, it's not compact and dense as compact bone is. Compact bone, I'm sorry, I'm looking right, diaphysis. Diaphysis. That's the compact bone. So in the trabecular bone, there's these tiny little struts that make it spongy, but compact bone is hollowed out in the middle and is a very sturdy shaft. But I keep telling you this, that both types are lamellar bone. Even though they look different with the naked eye. So what you got to do is just think about how spongy bone and compact bone, they don't differ in the content of their tissues. They only differ in mass. So I'll put this slide, spongy bone, compact bone, both lamellar arrangement. You have to study the osteon in compact bone, and the spongy bone has these tiny trabecular struts. So for the, in the diaphysis and compact bone, study the osteon. We have I took pictures of the bone models, and we'll have time next week to look at the bone models in the lab, but study the pictures of the models for now. If you look on your schedule, your next lab quiz is based on pictures of our bone models and muscle fiber models. And so I've included them within the lecture slide. It's kind of better to kind of look at the micro model in the app for the model of compact bone. There we go. So this is a cross section. So what I've highlighted in green is the hollowed out diaphysis filled with yellow marrow. based on it's round, do you think it's the epiphysis or diaphysis that they took this little section of bone out of? It is the diaphysis, the shaft. And, well, when you hollow it out, the medullary cavity, this one is filled with yellow marrow. It's yellow due to an infiltration of adipocytes, okay? Red marrow it produces the blood cells. But most bones are filled with the yellow marrow. Pretty much the only long bone that I know of that has the red marrow is the proximal femur. I think I might have mentioned that. And then pretty much in all other cases, it's yellow marrow. Pretty much, maybe in development, it's all red marrow. But then as adipocytes infiltrate, it becomes yellow marrow. It doesn't produce the bone cells. By the time you're adult, you have red marrow in a few places, including the proximal femur. Well, anyways, the medullary cavity is filled with marrow. It's hollowed out. There is trabecular bone, a little bit, that kind of lines the inner part of this diaphysis. So what I've highlighted in green now is the spongy bone. It kind of lines this cavity, right? That's kind of what they're showing you there. I mean, there's not much there. What you can see is it's covered with a membrane called the endosteum. See if I can. Let me just not highlight it. So spongy bone is covered with an endosteum. A membrane that covers spongy bone on the inside, because endo means within. What I like about this picture, well, the model, is that the endosteum is this pinkish membrane covering the bone, and they section part of it away. And you can see these tiny little struts actually have layers. That's why I keep telling you that trabecular bone is lamellar. Okay. So I'm going to zoom out. But really what makes this bone strong are all the osteons. Okay, so what I've highlighted in green are all the osteons of the compact bone, these columns of bone that make compact bone strong, rigid, and tough. And if you look at this part here where they section it away, and you see it looks like kind of a wedding cake with all the tiers, but what they're doing is they're pulling out the layers of an osteon. And what they want you to see, I'll really zoom in, is this alternating arrangement of collagen and crystals. Do you see how each layer, it kind of like goes, it kind of zigzags? So that this layer here, they kind of oriented. Let me describe it here. Well, let me write what you're supposed to see. Tell me if it makes sense to you. This is Osteon Structure. It's also lamellar. Many layers, and you pull out the layers, each layer you have this alternating arrangement of collagen and crystals. Alternating arrangement of collagen and crystals. It allows bone to resist torsion forces, which are spiral forces that can break bone. Resist torsion. So what I'm saying is the alternating arrangement of each layer, they kind of zigzag, it allows you to resist torsion. Like if you twist someone's arm like this in both directions, you can resist it, that's torsion. Because you have layers of bone that resist in this orientation and this resists in that orientation. So you resist both ways, no matter which way you twist the bone. Of course, you can still fracture your bone if you twist it hard enough, but they're designed to resist it. Okay. Now, the other thing you see next to it, they just model something else here. You can see how each layer has osteocytes. Okay, those cells in each layer. Osteocytes and lacuna within each layer of this bone. Osteocytes in lacuna. In anatomy, the E always pluralizes it, osteocytes in lacuna. And, well, they're in each layer. In each layer of lamellar bone. Now, do you see how there's like those like little cracks? They look like cracks to me. Like cracks in the sidewalk. Well, they're not. They're little extensions that connect each cell to each cell. And we call them canaliculi. Look in your notes, you wrote it down at some point. And they connect all the cells together, and they all connect with a blood vessel that's in the very center. Canaliculi form a network for nourishment to travel within the layers, between the layers. Or nourishment to spread between layers of lamellar bone. Because remember, osteocytes are osteoblasts that became trapped within the layers of bone they secreted. And so all these layers, they surround a central canal, okay? And as you can see, the central canals contain the artery, the nerve artery, vein, and lymphatics. And the blood has to spread from the central canal out to all the layers. You can use the canaliculi to get to each cell. Central canal. Contains nerve, artery, vein. Sometimes I go NAV for short, for nerve, artery, vein. There's also lymphatics in there. Now in the, most illustrators illustrate lymphatics with green. So you see a little green tube, it's a lymphatic vessel. Lymphatics shouldn't be green, they should be white because they carry a lot of white blood cells called lymphocytes, lymphatics. So you pack all those osteons and you got compact bone. But because they're round in shape, you have gaps in between the osteons. The gap fillers are called interstitial lamella. Okay, so if I point to a space between osteons, identify it as interstitial lamella.
Can you show one of those gaps?
Yeah, I'll try to point to one. Like here, right there. See? That's a gap. There's a gap there. There's a gap there. Anywhere just between the columns, yeah. Interstitial lamella gap fillers. Then you have like lamellar bone, like kind of sandwiching all these osteons and interstitial lamella, like right there. So you have layers of bone on the outer part there, and it's called circumferential lamella, but because it's on the outside, it's external circumferential lamella, highlighted in green. External circumferential lamella. So it's basically layers of bone on the outer part. It's external, so the name of the term pretty much describes what it is. But you also have kind of circumferential lamella on the inner part of compact bone, right there. This is kind of like in between the compact bone and the spongy bone, right? So it's internal circumferential lamella. Do you know what it means when I put the quotes here? It means the same thing. I think I'm old and young people don't know that. I'm old. Young people know a lot of things about abbreviations, but you don't know the old ones like I know. That's why I don't have Twitter. I try to read Twitter. I don't understand what people are saying. What the heck? All these abbreviation stuff? I don't even try. You guys can teach me someday. So anyways, internal circumferential lamella, and we can see the endosteum right next to it covering the spongy bone. Well, the compact bone has an outer covering, and it's called the periosteum, and we highlight it here. It's highlighted in green. You can see there's an outer connective tissue layer. The periosteum covers compact bone. It's a really tough fiber. Periosteum. Now periosteum, think of it as an outer covering of compact bone. Like I said, when you look at the dry bones in the lab, the periosteum has been removed. It's one of the things that the domestic beetles have to eat. And it's you can't tell from this, but it's kind of a double layered outer covering. Double layered. And you should know why it's double layered. The outer layer of the double layer is just a tough fibrous part. So I'll put outer layer, just tough, fibrous. It really sticks to bone well because when you peel it back, there's all these tough fibers. This app calls it perforating collagen fiber bundles, right? Our models call them Sharpies fibers. But anyways, whatever you want to call them, I'll call them Sharpies fibers. I'll just note them. They really help the fibrous layer to stick to bone well. Now, what's not really illustrated here is there's an inner layer that's osteogenic. So continue this up here, inner layer. Osteogenic. It's got osteoblasts, right? They build bone. So know that. These osteogenic layers, the cells that can kind of build layers of bone from the outside. And notice the blood supply to compact bone has an intricate canal system. You can see the blood vessels in there. Right there. All right, so at this point, I kind of showed you everything I wanted to on this model. It's pretty cool. Let's go back to the PowerPoints and look at the pictures of the models that I have in the PowerPoint slides. So this slide shows you the alternating arrangement of collagen in crystals. This is showing you the arrangement of flat bone. And that flat bones have spongy bone in the middle, and compact bone on the outer edges. And if you take a microscope and look at the trabecular bone, you have these little tiny struts. And they're aligned precisely along lines of stress, so they don't crack under pressure. And if you were to cut one of those tiny struts and look at it under the microscope, you see that they're covered with an endosteum, and each strut has layers. So trabecular bone is also lamellar bone. Okay, it has a lamellar arrangement. Now the reason why you can, you have a question? Oh, no, you're stretching. All right, the reason why you can hollow out your bones is so you don't get weighed down. In terms of the physics, if it's hollowed out here, it's just an empty shaft. The way the line of stress goes, it kind of compresses on this side, and you have tension on that side. They kind of cancel each other out in the middle. So as long as you have a strong shaft of compact bone, you can afford to be hollowed out in the middle. Okay? So that way our bones don't weigh us down. We already learned these terms, but let's just review. On your half sheet, just call this number 1. 1A, B, and C. Just go ahead and name it. Oh, if you don't have a half sheet, go get one. Take a minute. All right, I think that was enough time. What you call the A's? Epiphyses, B, diaphysis, and what about C? You can call it the metaphysis or the growth plate. It would be growth plate when it's filled with cartilage and you're a growing young boy or girl. It would be called metaphysis after the bone fusion. But yeah, it's fine for the half sheet. Either is acceptable. Let's turn this back on. Proceed. Okay, well, do that, moving on. Here's the model of compact bone. We kind of did this by looking at the micro model on the app. You can study the osteon as a layered tier structure like this, or just right there. That's what it looks like when you cut the whole thing. Both of those are just osteon. That's the name of the structure. Circumferential lamella. You see where I put the brackets? Like externally here and internally there. Okay. Now number 2 on your half sheet. On your half sheet, let's go A, B. For A, right on your half sheet, boom, what is that? Identify. For 2A. And then for 2B, identify this one. Once again, on your half sheet, 2A, identify. 2B, identify. Number 3, A, B, C, D on your half sheet. And I'll go back over them, but just kind of really quiz yourself for now. "3A. What do you think I'm going for when I point to that? What do you think? For 2A, this one here.
3A.
I'm sorry, 3A, yes. 3A. Okay, so then 3B. This right there. Three C, this one, and 3D, this one. I'll give you some time. A, B, C, D, from left to right. Go, then we'll review in just a minute. And by the way, as you're doing this, for your next lab quiz, these are the kinds of things I'm going to ask you, so let's get them down now. as you practice, spelling counts. I graded your last lab quiz, I give them back to you, and yeah, some of you need to practice spelling. Let's just not hold any punches here. Practice your spelling. All right, let's do some review. For number 2A, didn't I have you identify this? And what did you put? Did you guys put osteon?
Yes.
That would be correct. Which book did this do? Did it start with external? External circumferential lamella. The key. Let's see, let me do this one. Well, if you printed out the slides, they are labeled. I was going for lacuna. I got cut off. It says lacuna. Okay. The gap fillers, interstitial lamella, essential canal. Do you see how the model, like these are empty spaces, so those are lacuna, but they illustrated cells there? Osteocytes, and then because they made them all prickly looking, that's the canaliculi. So osteocytes with canaliculi would be the correct answer. And then, yeah, so we did A, B, C, D. Okay. Sure. Bam.
So on the real quiz, would you accept the gap fillers?
No,
No? Okay.
that's just a descriptor,
Okay.
not acceptable answer. Interstitial Lamella. Well, here's a side view of the model, and it shows you the canal system, how the blood vessels kind of like get to and fro within compact bone. You need to know the central canal and the perforating canal. Okay, so we'll write those terms down. The central canal, I already showed it to you. It's right in the middle of the osteon. But you can also call it the whole thing from top to bottom. It kind of, see how it runs kind of parallel with the column? Sometimes they refer to them as haversian canals. So if you see that term, think central canal. I'm saying that they run parallel with osteons. But then you have ones that kind of cut through perpendicularly, and those are called perforating or Wolfman's canals, the ones that go perpendicular to the osteons. Perforating canal, also called Wolfman's canal, run perpendicular with osteons. So those are things I could ask you. So again, what's this one again? I know you're busy writing, but did you actually look at the picture? What is this one?
Perforating.
Yeah, perforating, good. And the other one was the central canal. Well, here's another model that we have in the lab. We can pull these out for you next time. You can look at them. Let's see here. There's a nice picture of it. Got some closer up pictures we can kind of just talk about. And I labeled some of them for you. Do you see why they call number 5? I just been calling them layers, right? Lamellar bone. You can call them Haversian lamella because if this is the Haversian canal, the layers of bone around it are Haversian lamella. So it's kind of like fusing the terms I've been using. Number 7, here's number 7. I don't see the number. But anyways, all these cells, the blue cells are osteocytes. Canal, well, they put the 9 there, but all the little red squiggly lines are supposed to symbolize the blood kind of perforating out all the layers, providing nourishment to the cells. Let's move it on. So again, 5 is your Haversian lamella. 6 is a gap filler, Interstitial Lamella, and the lacuna, the empty space, no cell in it. Number 10 is pointing to 1. I could point to any of them. Lacuna. This is pointing to the structures inside nerve, artery, vein, a lymph vessel. Okay, all in the central canal or Haversian canal. Okay, this is the outer part of the bone model here. There's a kind of where I'm getting it from. So I just kind of zoom in because they make it a point to show you 2 things, 7 and 8. 7, the blue is the cell, and 8 is the lacuna, the space it resides in. And again, all the little lines that extend off of it are the canaliculi. Okay? Here's some pictures I have on the periosteum and osteum, but I pretty much already described them in your notes when we looked at the model. The pictures are good to look at if you don't have the app handy. You see the Sharpie's fibers of the periosteum. Let's see here. Let's move on from this. This model shows the double layer. Remember I said the outer layer is fibrous and the inner layer is osteogenic, and they even show you 2 layers there. So they did a good job with that. But if I point to like any of these, the fibers that kind of penetrate the bone, those are those Sharpie fibers. Sharpie's fibers, or you can call them perforating fibers. Okay. Remember, it's osteogenic because what cell type is there? Osteoblasts. Osteoblasts make the inner layer osteogenic. That means it can make bone. So, the periosteum is a complete double layer. One layer is fibrous, one layer is osteogenic. Now the endosteum, think of it as an incomplete layer. There's kind of gaps in the layer. An incomplete layer. So what you got is a combination of osteoblasts and osteoclasts that can either build bone or break down bone. So they're showing you both there. So it's an incomplete layer with osteoclasts and osteoblasts. filling the, filling the gaps of this incomplete layer. So you can remodel bone, you can build bone. Osteoblasts build bone. So that's why they show you that little blue layer. Here's the cells. They secrete osteoid, blue, which becomes calcified. It'll be another layer of lamellar bone. Remember our multinucleated osteoclast with this ruffled border there? It kind of makes a sealed zone underneath it and secretes lytic chemicals to dissolve the matrix to liberate calcium into the blood. On the model, well, let's pretend it's the quiz. And I show you a picture like this. And I say, identify this gray layer. What would you call it? What do you think? What do you think the model makers are going for you to identify? Endosteum. So here's the picture of the whole model. And they put a little bit of gray on the inside. That means it's the endosteum. But what if it's the gray membrane on the outer part? What do you think? Periosteum. Yeah. So it's on the models. All right, I'm shifting gears here. We're going to go to longitudinal bone growth and bone remodeling. Here's an X-ray graph. You look at the picture on the left. What they're showing you is what's a joint. And at the knobby ends there, you can see how the bones articulate. And wherever you see space in the micrograph, it's cartilage. Okay. The X-ray is supposed to show is the osseous tissue. So if you kind of see space there, it's cartilage. And if you look at this under a stained slide, okay, a little section there, you see, well, basically, there are different zones. That's what they're trying to show you here. And the reason why bones get longer is because that little cartilage plate, the chondrocytes are constantly undergoing mitosis, okay, making the bone longer. But underneath it is this bone, and it's kind of like ossifying the cartilage, all right? But as long as there's, let me go to the next slide here. Okay, I'll go through the zones. So basically up top, they look like little potato bugs. They're undergoing mitosis, they're dividing. Young, vibrant chondrocytes proliferating. Okay, and as long as you have cartilage in your growth plate, you'll keep getting taller during your growing years. Okay. Bottom, that's bone. And these cells are ossifying the cartilage in front of it. So it's like this layer is being chased by the bone layer on the bottom. Okay. So at some point, these young cells die and become ossified. All right, so let's go through the zones. This is longitudinal bone growth, bones get longer. We're going to look at the growth plate. This is prior to bony fusion. What's happening in a growing boy? Top zone, proliferation zone. Chondrocytes. Remember, these are our cartilage cells undergo mitosis. They get older, they hypertrophy, that's when they kind of start to die. Not yet, but hypertrophic because the cells get bigger, right? The older cartilage cells enlarge. That's a pretty good descriptor. So that's number 2. hypertrophic zone the chondrocytes enlarge. Okay. Then they kind of die and after they get calcified. So number 3 is the calcification zone. The matrix becomes calcified and that kills off the chondrocytes. Right? So the matrix is going to degrade. Calcification zone. Matrix calcifies, chondrocytes die. So without any cartilage cells to maintain the cartilage, that matrix will deteriorate, and then the ossification zone is when the new bone forms to replace that cartilage. Okay? So number 4. Ossification zone. I'm going to say new bone replaces the cartilage that has deteriorated. So that's a growth plate under a microscope. It's bone chasing cartilage. So what we just described is bone growth on the left. Longitudinal growth, long bone's getting longer. Okay, you just kind of replace cartilage with bone at the epiphyseal ends of the growth plates. However, the term bone remodeling, think of it as packets of remodeling units. And think of the cells. You need osteoclast and osteoblast. You need to break down bone and redeposit it in different places. You're remodeling. Like, you know, when you remodel your kitchen, don't you have to do the demo first? Like, smash stuff and get rid of it. And then you put the new stuff in. So there's always this kind of breakdown and deposition when you remodel bone. And now this picture is pretty useful. It shows why you need both when you have longitudinal bone growth. Because to maintain the knob end shape of a bone, first of all, why do bones have knobby ends? It's because they need a wider surface to articulate with the bone next to it. Right? The epiphysis is a knobby end. But as the bone gets longer, say from this length to this length, this is maybe the old outline. It's like, you gotta like, well, it says it pretty good here. Bone that was here has been resorbed, and it's like bone was added here by appositional growth. Okay, so it's like you took some here and you redeposited here to make the shaft sturdy to maintain the bone shape. So, let me write that down. Let's define the term appositional growth. It's kind of different from the longitudinal bone growth. It's the process of adding new bone on top of old bone. And the process sometimes involves, you add this new bone on top of old bone, you kind of surround blood vessels when you do that. got to surround blood vessels. Otherwise, there's no blood supply. The tissue's not going to. You can't do it. You can't even build a bone without the blood. And even if you could, the new bone would die without the blood supply. So it's always based on blood. Like if you built a house where there's no water, no matter how deep you dug the well, there's no water, you die. You don't build a house where there's no water. Same thing with building bone tissue. There's a couple of slides here. Now there's a slide here with a couple of links. Excuse me. Let me see if I can get this link going here. Hold on a second. Hold on. I'm missing a step. All right, this is defining appositional growth.
Surface of older bone.
Let's start it over.
Is there a closed captioning?
Bones
Let me
grow
check.
through the process of appositional growth, the formation of new bone on the surface of older bone or cartilage. Osteoblasts beneath the periosteum lay down bone to form ridges around it.
Oh, forget it. That was, I can't get out of here.
Blood vessel.
Oh, escape. Thanks, guys. That didn't work either.
The blood vessel lies in a groove between the
Yeah,
ridges.
CC right there in the bottom right.
Got it. Now we'll start over. Thank you.
Bones grow through the process of appositional growth, the formation of new bone on the surface of older bone or cartilage. Osteoblasts beneath the periosteum lay down bone to form ridges around a blood vessel. The blood vessel lies in a groove between the ridges. The groove is transformed into a tunnel when the bone built on the adjacent ridges meets. The periosteum of the groove becomes the endosteum of the tunnel. Osteoblasts from the endosteum lay down bone to form a new concentric lamella. The production of additional concentric lamellae fills in the tunnel and completes the formation of a new osteon.
That was a very old school one, but I really like it. And this next one I even like better. This one is, the artwork is more advanced, and they have some really good definitions of some of the terms I've talked about. So as you watch this one, I want you to define on your half sheet. Are we on number 5? Number 4. Define two terms, bone modeling, bone remodeling. I think also prior to that, they talk about, quote unquote, a sealed zone. What are they talking about when they mention sealed zone? Listen for that too. So those 3 things: bone modeling, bone remodeling, sealed zone. Okay, let's keep this one going. Oops. Yeah, sorry. Well, they got you, so.
The skeleton changes across the human lifespan. This is characterized predominantly by bone formation and growth throughout childhood, followed by a gradual loss of bone density that begins in early adulthood that can accelerate significantly in older adults. The density of bone is modulated by a group of cells including osteoclasts, which are multinucleated cells that resorb bone, and osteoblasts, which refill the resorption cavities created by osteoclasts. Osteoclasts anchor themselves to the surface of bone. This creates a microenvironment underneath the cell, which is referred to as the sealed zone. Within this zone, the osteoclasts create an acidic environment that dissolves the bone's mineral content. Once the mineral content of the bone has been dissolved, enzymes released from osteoclasts remove the remaining collagenous bone matrix to complete the process of resorption. Following resorption, osteoblasts move into the resorption space and start to produce and deposit organic matrix called osteoid. Osteoid, a substance made predominantly of collagen, forms a scaffold in which minerals including calcium and phosphate begin to crystallize. Some active osteoblasts become trapped within the matrix they secrete and thereby become osteocytes. Other osteoblasts will undergo apoptosis or will revert back to lining cells which cover the surface of bone. This cycle of bone resorption and formation is referred to as remodeling. There is also a process where bone formation by osteoblasts occur without prior bone resorption by osteoclasts. This results in an increase in bone mass and is referred to as bone modeling. Bone modeling promotes the growth of bones and is important for maintaining bone strength. Remodeling also plays an important role during bone growth by optimizing the growing structure. After the age of 30, most people experience a gradual loss in bone mass due to a relative decrease in the activity of osteoblasts compared with osteoclasts. However, there are many factors that impact the process of bone remodeling and influence the degree of bone loss we experience as we age. For example, medications such as glucocorticoids, which can promote osteoclast activity and also reduce bone formation. Proper nutrition and physical activity can help strengthen bone. It is also believed that osteocytes form a complex network in bone that can sense any increased workload on the bone and respond by triggering the differentiation and activity of osteoblasts to increase bone density. Conversely, when bone experiences reduced loading conditions, such as during long-term bed rest, resorption and remodeling increase to eliminate underloaded bone. Loss of bone mass reduces its strength and increases the risk of fracture. This highlights the importance of staying active, maintaining good nutrition throughout life, and being aware of personal risk factors associated with low bone density.
All right, there's a lot of good terms in there that I'm going to refer to. And you have the links there if you want to watch it again. Turn the lights back on. So for our terms here, which of these two, which is the one where you just add new bone? That's it. The modeling, where you just add more bone. The remodeling was the bone resorption with the bone deposition. Okay. Which cell, osteoblast or osteoclast, did the sealed zone refer to? Osteoclast. Once I break down from. There's other good things there I want to talk about. Did you hear at which age, what's like the magic age where like you start to decline in your bone mass? 30. After 30, it's all downhill. That's true. I remember learning that as a student. So if you're not 30, you might think about taking up an exercise regimen, and you don't do that already. And even if you're over 30, it's never too late to exercise. So the calcium homeostasis is very important when you have a lecture on bones. I want to talk about the hormonal maintenance of blood calcium levels. Because your skeleton is a good calcium store, and you need calcium for muscle function. Blood calcium homeostasis. You want to keep some homeostatic level. If you have high blood calcium, you're going to have bone deposition, increased osteoblast activity. If you have low blood calcium and you want to get it back to homeostasis, there's a hormone called PTH for increasing the bone resorption to increase the osteoclast activity to get you back to homeostasis. So know the hormones. Here's this figure here. Let's pretend the imbalance is the one on top, blood calcium. It's high. You eat leafy green vegetables, you increase your blood calcium from the food you eat. That's the imbalance. Increase the blood calcium. So you want to take that calcium and you want to deposit it in the bone. There's a gland called the thyroid. It's in your neck. Okay, this is in your neck region. And the hormone is calcitonin. So in response to the high blood calcium, the calcitonin, it will target cells and it stimulates the cells to deposit the calcium into the bone matrix. So we have two cell types. Osteoblast, osteoclast, and they're both always working. It's just a matter of who's working harder. Okay. So really, what calcitonin can do, it inhibits the osteoclast. That's kind of their mechanism of action. You got two cells always working. Inhibit one. So by default, which cell is working more? This one. The ones that build bone. So you're going to have a net deposition of bone. Net calcium deposition. That means deposit the bone, the calcium into the bone, and that lowers blood calcium. The other imbalance, if calcium is too low and you want to raise it in the blood, if calcium in the blood is too low and you want to raise it, there's actually a gland right behind the thyroid gland. It's the posterior view. These four paired nodules are the parathyroid glands. The parathyroids release a hormone called, well, we just abbreviated PTH, which stands for parathyroid hormone. Has the opposing effect. Well, it's going to, they show a picture of the osteoclasts. It's going to stimulate those. And so their activity will be more increased. It'll outstrip the osteoblast activity. So I'll say stimulates, stim, osteoclast. So you're going to have a net bone resorption. That's what I'm writing. And that'll liberate more calcium to the blood to increase calcium levels. Okay, that's a simple diagram of how the hormones oppose each other. The other thing that can influence the calcium levels in addition to the blood calcium levels itself is the mechanical load. The video referred to it. Okay? Which increases bone mass, being physically active or bed rest? The video said it. Well, physical activity, if you increase the mechanical load, the skeleton responds by making it stronger. So mechanical load is extremely important. Weight-bearing exercise are extremely important for healthy skeleton in depositing calcium into the bone. So mechanical load, that's a fancy way of saying, like during the weight-bearing exercises, like running, okay? As an example, weight-bearing exercise increases BMD. That stands for the bone mineral density, and you can actually measure that in the clinics. And so, if it's high, because you're highly active, the bone hypertrophies. If it's low, the bone atrophies. It wastes away. So a sedentary lifestyle, that basically means couch potato. But maybe you're injured. Maybe it's not by choice. You had an injury, and the back injury, and you can't move for months. Call it bed rest. Bone wastes away. The video said that you increase the bone resorption to eat away the unloaded bone. If you don't use it, you lose it, literally.
What happens when you tear ligaments, like in your knee, or what happens when you can't do those kinds of things? Because
Ligaments can heal. Yeah.
But I just feel like the really common knee injuries that happen, they're limited to actually running again.
That's right. Yeah, so if you have a chronic injury that prevents you from running again, you have to find a less load-bearing alternative. Maybe elliptical is better.
Yeah.
Not as load-bearing. Or water exercises, where you're in water, you have the buoyancy of water to help you.
And you can still gain bone.
Yes,
Okay.
and you can still gain bone mass by finding other exercises that aren't as stressful if you've had an injury, like ankle or knee. Yeah, oh, definitely.
Can you repeat what BMD stands for?
Bone mineral density. Let me write it out. Bone mineral density. Basically, it's good. More BMD is good. That's what we want. Less BMD, bad. Just remember that. You have bone loss with age. Remember, after 30, it's all downhill. With age, what's happening is the efficiency of osteoblasts decline. So the rate of bone formation is less than the rate of bone resorption. It's always those two cell types, osteoblast class, which one is working more. If osteoblasts are declining, osteoclasts by default, you have more bone resorption. So the result of that is a net deficit, loss of BMD. And that could lead later in life to something called osteoporosis, which is the clinical manifestation of low BMD. Basically, osteoporotic bone is brittle bone. The clinical manifestation of bone mineral density being too low. Clinical manifestation means you break a bone, you got to go to the doctor. Okay, you show up in the doctor's office, something's wrong. And osteoporotic bone, it's very porous. It's like, we'll look at pictures of it, but you can measure these things. I won't have you remember the numbers, but the category of low BMD is if like the number is like about 1 standard deviation below the norm, okay? 1 standard deviation below the average. Well, what's average? They kind of use the average for young people, like whatever the number is for females, 20 to 29 years, whatever their BMD is on average, if you're 1 standard deviation below young girls, that's considered low. And why girls? I think they select a particular gender because on average, women have menopause after 50, and that causes osteoporosis. So I think the female gender is chosen as an average that could be safe for everybody. Anyways, that's considered low BMD. If you're like osteoporotic, the bone mineral density is like greater than or equal to, or it's less than, I should say, 2.5 standard deviations below the mean. It's not less than, it's more than, sorry. Pretzel logic. More than 2.5 standard deviations below the average. So they quantitate this stuff, and here's a picture of it, of osteoporotic bone. Well, without any clues other than what I've told you so far, which picture is osteoporotic bone, top or bottom? Bottom. You're looking at trabecular bone in both pictures, but the trabecular bone of the bottom picture is weaker and more porous, less density. Okay. More than a couple of standard deviations below the mean. So, again, we already defined osteoporosis. It's the clinical manifestation of bone atrophy. Well, I have a term there, low trauma fractures, you know, like the case study we looked at, like grandma, grandpa falls and breaks bones. Maybe a young person falls, 20 years old, they don't break a bone. Okay, what's the difference? Well, if an elderly person is osteoporotic bone, then a low trauma can cause the bones to break. Okay, it's not just old people. I mean, sometimes there's genetics, right? You have a kid that's always breaking their bones. It could be genetic. The most common breaks in weak bones are wrist, spine, hip. There's a couple of types of osteoporosis, type 1, type 2. Type 1 usually refers to postmenopausal women. Let me read what I have on the slide. Associated with menopause, accelerated trabecular bone mass, wrist fractures, hip fractures, typically occurs in women's 15 to 20 years post-menopause. Well, post-menopause has nothing to do with bone. It's the ovaries, you ovulate once a month, egg fertilized by sperm, but there's a depletion of the eggs. Happens at around age 50.5, right? ovaries have no eggs. And menopause sets in, and usually is associated with more bone loss. So 15 to 20 years post-menopause, because of the hormonal changes due to menopause, you could have this kind of osteoporosis. Type 2 is simply age-related. You know, the elderly, 70 years or greater, just you're well along in years and maybe your bones have wasted away a little bit and you're more prone to hip fractures, wedge fractures of the vertebra. Typically, when I use the term elderly, it refers to 65 and older. Okay, if you want to be strict about the textbook definition of elderly, but when you get certainly to 70 years, you might think about type 2 osteoporosis, male or female, okay, depending on how the patient presents. This isn't exactly the latest research, but it shows generally what you would find in any research on osteoporotic bone. They took Caucasian women with osteoporosis and they broke them down into age cohorts, 35, 55, and 75. And the women in purple had a fragility fracture within the next 10 years. So this is a longitudinal study. Just get a bunch of people to sign up, categorize them by age, and just see who has a fracture. Okay. And so what's the trend? Well, the older you get, the more likely you're going to have a fracture. So your risk increases with age. Okay, that's why age-related is a type of osteoporosis. Just to put some numbers to it, there's 1.3 million fractures annually attributed to osteoporosis. By age 80, the majority of women have some kind of vertebral wedge fracture. Those are your backbones. That's why you can have a hunchback, maybe some height loss because of the vertebral wedge fractures. Kyphosis, I'm sorry, I went too fast. So you have height loss. Kyphosis is hunchback. So maybe the wedge fracture occurred in the vertebra in your chest region, causing a hunchback or kyphosis. Okay, and that would explain the height loss, like the picture shows. So, about 250,000 adults greater than 45 years of age fracture their hip each year. That's a lot, it's a big number. And 12 to 20% of those are associated with excess mortality. So that means you break your hip, you go to the nursing home, and maybe you die for some other reason, but it's kind of associated with death. That's what it means. If you have a hip fracture, it's kind of a big deal in the elderly. Only 25% of hip fracture patients regain full independence. That's a small number. Okay? So you go into the nursing home, chance of you getting out, only 25%, 1 chance in 4. 1 in 5 people with a hip fracture ends up in a nursing home within a year. Okay, so maybe if you don't go immediately, maybe a year later you do. You lose a lot of independence and a lot of daily activities that you could do when you're younger. When you're older and you break your hip, can't do it. Okay. Maybe your spouse dies, you're alone, the kids are busy working, and you can't take care of them. And they have to go to a nursing home. All low trauma fractures associated with all low trauma fractures are associated with premature mortality, not just hip fractures. Thus, all low trauma fractures in the elderly need to be regarded as important events. So, I thought that was a good quote to share with you. And so, causes of osteoporosis, the excess loss of calcium, low BMD, right? Well, we said menopause, right? Because it turns out estrogen stimulates osteoblasts. So after menopause, the hormones change such that estrogen can no longer stimulate osteoblasts. Also, in young female athletes, overtraining can do it. So even though mechanical load is great for the skeleton, it really disrupts female ovarian cycle. And so Some female athletes, they know they're training hard enough if they kind of disrupt their menstrual cycle, but that's not necessarily a good thing. Now, dietary calcium deficiency could be a cause. There's not enough calcium in your diet. Lack of regular exercise. Activities that put force on bone, such as weight bearing or resistance training, stimulates osteoblasts to lay down bone. I mean, general guideline is, when I was a student, like the American College of Sports Medicine and the CDC, they came together and they put out a statement to the general public. A half an hour of exercise on all or most days of the week. That's the general rule, a half hour. And in that day, the half hour doesn't even have to be all at once. It could be 15 minutes and 15 minutes, you know. But anyways, that's kind of a general rule of thumb if you're not getting enough exercise. So that's about, what, 6-7 hours a week. So see if you hit that landmark. And that would be enough physical activity if you do. Excessive protein intake. There's a lot of high protein diets out there to help you lose weight, but actually protein is a dirty fuel. Okay? If you break down carb or lipid, it's clean. The byproduct is just carbon dioxide, which can be breathed off in water. But because proteins have the nitrogenous group, you have to kind of deal with that. And sometimes you deal with it by buffering it with calcium, which you leach from the bone. So high protein intake is not good for the skeleton, actually. Now here's a picture of low BMD in the spongy bone of your spine. And here's some pictures of normal versus fractured vertebrae. They're called wedge fractures. So know what a wedge fracture looks like. I haven't taught the skeleton yet, but it's not hard to know that that's normal and that's severe, right? Yeah. And you can see how it wedges in. The arrows are pointing to where the trabecular bone just collapsed, and the ceiling and floor of this bone is kind of wedged in. So know your no wedge fracture, and no hip fracture. A hip fracture, next slide, is a fracture of the femoral neck, typically. The femur is the longest, strongest bone in the whole body. However, its weak part is the neck. You have a rather bulbous, spherical shaped head in a deep socket, but where it narrows at the neck, that's where it's prone to fracture. If it's severe enough and pins won't stabilize it, you have to get a whole hip replacement. Okay? And I've seen those in the cadavers when I dissect them. It's kind of a surprise. You don't know what you're going to see when you dissect a cadaver. But I have seen those. And that'll weigh you down. These are heavy. So,
Are they made out of metal?
yeah, just like the picture indicates, they are. They're very heavy. So this number is higher than this one. You can kind of see the picture in the imaging technology, how this bone could be osteoporotic. This bone is probably normal. You worry about hip fractures and bones that are brittle with low mineral density. All right, so what are the risk factors associated with fractures? So osteoporosis is bad, but the real reason why it's bad is because of all the fractures. So what are the risk factors associated with fractures? What is likely to make you fall down? what is the risk of you falling? Okay, here's something. Neurological deficits, right? You have slow reflexes. Impaired vision. You just don't see very well. You didn't see that step in your house. Impaired balance, reaction time, gait, strength. These are all associated with the elderly. Maybe you're on a lot of medication and that makes you tired and sleepy. All of these will increase your risk of falling. And of course, the number one thing, osteoporotic bone is not good either, right? Okay, so basically, the risk factors are, to sum up, osteoporotic bone, and anything that increases risk of falling.
When you say neurological defects, do you mean like lack of strength or like neurologically not?
Neurologically refers to the central nervous system.
Okay.
So it could be your brain is degenerating, any brain degenerative disease.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it can be like hydrocephalus?
No, I wasn't thinking that. More commonly, it's any kind of dementia in the elderly that might cause it. But hydrocephalus definitely would cause a problem. It's just not a common cause that we see. So prevention, this is the good news, right? How do you prevent this stuff from happening? Lifestyle. D&E, diet and exercise. But also, drugs can help. I mean, some of the pharmaceuticals. Talk about some of that. It's usually a combination of both. You usually go to the doctor and they kind of keep track of things. They'll always try to prescribe some lifestyle changes. And if it's not enough, lifestyle and a combination of some medication could help you. And on this slide, I just kind of have some sources of calcium and how much you need. I'm not going to test you on that, but they do recommend in your elderly years the most calcium in your diet. I think the dark leafy green vegetables are probably the best source of calcium. That's what I want you to see there. So you need calcium in your diet. And prevention is also regular exercise. Okay, I already mentioned that. Counteracts bone loss. But it also improves neuromuscular function. Okay, when you're working out and you're increasing your muscle strength, the nerve pathways are improving as well. Okay, so that averts falls, and if you do fall, it reduces the impact because your reflexes are better. So exercise is good for a lot of different reasons. Well, I showed you some data before, but this is actual data. We kind of mentioned how after age 30, it's all downhill. That's why for any group, male or female, any ethnicity, it declines. BMD declines with age after age 30. Up until 30, it can go up, but after that, it goes down. And some groups are harder than the others. That's why I always say you always want to put money in the bank. You don't want to start off lower. You want to start off higher because everyone declines. So later in life, you would rather be up here than down there. I think that's easy to see. Okay? Because remember the definitions. If you're more than 2.5 standard deviations below the norm, then you're considered osteoporotic. Well, anyway, just to put it in simplified form, before 30, levels increase, and if your activity level, depending on what it is, increases, your BMD increases. So pretend the green group exercised more than the blue group. Okay, so theoretically, you'd have more bone deposition in the physically active group. And then so even if you decline after age 30, if you're more physically active in your younger years, you minimize the bone loss, but it's never too late to exercise. It's not like I'm 31, oh, it's too late. You know, geez, I'm going to be a couch potato my whole life now, I have an excuse. No, it's not. research shows at any age, even in the elderly, if you start, it's okay. What amazed me is even people with the best genetics, like Olympic athletes, they may be way higher. Even they have decline, okay? But because of their elite athlete lifestyle, they've been probably working out a lot more than we have. And in addition to lifestyle, I wanted to show you that well, it's never too late to exercise. You're never too old or too young to improve bone health. At all ages, a diet with enough calcium and vitamin D, together with weight-bearing physical activity, every day can prevent problems later. The one drug I want you to know is Alendronate Sodium, just to show you how drugs can prevent bone loss. Well, anyway, you don't have to know the chemical structure there. But they did a 3-year clinical study in women, and they gave them a 10 mg dose once daily, and they found that it could increase lumbar spine BMD. The lumbar spine is the low back, and it bears the most weight. And so what they did was, in the Alendronate Sodium group versus placebo, the treatment studies in postmenopausal women, they looked at their lumbar spine BMD percent change from baseline. And it looks like the experimental group that got Alendronate Sodium, it increased about 10 points. That's quite a bit versus placebo. So drugs can help too. And then they followed the fracture incidence. So here's all the fractures, 1-year fracture, any kind of fracture. And in every category, it's like decreased in every category. So, this kind of data, that's when you know this drug should be prescribed if there's no harmful side effects.
How does that drug work now?
I can't remember the mechanism. Let's see. It does, okay, I think it's on the next slide actually. Okay, that's why I make slides, because I can never remember. It affects the osteoclast. Let's look how. At the cell level, Alendronate Sodium, it localizes under the osteoclast. Remember what we call that? The sealed zone? Okay. Osteoclasts are able to adhere normally to bone surface, but they lack that ruffled border that's indicative of active resorption. Alendronate inhibits osteoclast activity, basically. Okay, so that's how it works. The net result is bone formation exceeds bone resorption, leading to progressive gains in bone mass. And the results of the study definitely showed that. All right, so I asked you this question the last time. Many people slip and fall without serious problems. Why do you think this patient had problems? How would you treat such a patient? So I asked you at the beginning, now I'm asking you at the end, this patient that had these fractures. The last thing I want you to do on your half sheet is to re-answer it now that you've heard the full lecture. Okay. And after you do that, class is dismissed. I don't have a lab today. So you can just go out to the rain and try to stay dry. One request. Some of you are in DSP&S and have asked me to take your exam over there, and I've kind of lost track because it's a lot of you. So before you leave, you just put your name on the sheet. That would really help me.
We don't have to take it over there, do we?
Oh, okay, let me be clear. Some of you are in DSP&S, and you know how you have to do that exam analysis, and I'm supposed to take lecture exam 1 over there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember who you are.
Okay.
You said, I can take my test to science skills. I can't. Okay. It's like 10 of you.
Okay.
So if you can put your name here. Okay, I'm not talking about lecture exam 2.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah, so I'm going to clarify. And also, since I'm thinking about it, you know about lecture exam 2, right?
It's online.
It's online. And when's the last day you can take it?
Tuesday,
Did I mention how many questions are on it?
50.
50. Okay, and it's timed, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys do know that.
Open notes, right?
Yes, open notes. Any other questions on the exam? Because I'm not going to see you after you turn this in.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, Can we use the study guide, or are we only allowed to use the e-text online? Can we use that? And the
Are
books?
you asking what you can use as notes?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can use e-text.
Okay.
Any other questions for the online exam? Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I use my phone to see?
Yeah. But I got the mic on. Don't be talking to anybody,
Oh,
right?
I can add them to Google.
Yeah, so don't use your phone on your phone, right? Who uses their phone anymore anyways? And no one uses their phone on their phone, right? Yeah, don't call me on my phone, you kidding me? Come on. I'm just kidding. Any other questions about the online exam? Okay, well, finish your half sheet, turn it in, and you're excused. Have a great President's Day weekend. I'm not going to see you till Wednesday.